We'll call to order our meeting for February 16th, 2022. This board meeting is to order, and I remind everyone to please mute your audio when not speaking, as well as state your name prior to making a comment or motion, and a second for any action item. Thank you. All right, I will begin by asking each commissioner to please respond with a here when I call out their name. Commissioner Bagnell.
I am here, finally. Sorry for being late.
Commissioner Doan.
I am here, but I signed in an hour early.
Commissioner Duggan.
I'm here mostly.
Mostly. Marvelous. And Commissioner Schmidt will not be joining us this evening. We will begin this evening by our reports from our Chief Executive Officer and our management staff.
Thank you,
Go.
commissioners. Appreciate it. I'm gonna advance. Let's see if I can get control here and advance. There we go. All right. Portland Cryptosporidium results for the month of January 2022. The Portland Water Bureau reported 11 Cryptosporidium oocyst detections in water samples collected from the Bull Run Headworks. Portland Water Bureau will continue to increase sampling 4 times per week until there are at least 3 weeks without any detections. The Oregon Health Authority has determined that the public does not need to take additional protections at this time. Complete results of Portland's Cryptosporidium monitoring are posted on the city's website. Charity auction. So we currently have a charity auction going on right now. Tualatin Valley Water District staff, through its nonprofit Tualatin Valley Water Employees Inc., are hosting a charity auction to benefit the ALS Association, Oregon Southwest Washington Chapter, the Epilepsy Foundation of Oregon, and Oregon Humane Society. The auction is open to the public and support is welcome. Donations are accepted through February 17th, and bidding is live now until noon on February 24th. And if you follow that link there, I won't read it. Registration is on the auction site, is required for those wishing to place a bid. A live component of our auction will be held February 24th, 7:45 a.m. And to register for that live auction, or if you have any questions, please contact Catherine DeSau at 503-848-3078 or at her email, catherine.desau@tvwd.org. I will just throw in that I've taken a look at what's there. There's some pretty cool stuff, as always, that is there to bid on. And I encourage you all, and if you want to pass it along, any friends, family, neighbors that might be interested, to also bid on those. It's a great cause. This is a new venue for us in terms of doing it this via online. So we're hoping for a good turnout. All right. So I don't know if, I think you're all aware, but Carrie Pack has let me know that she is accepted a position, and she's moving to a outstanding firm, WSC Engineers, and I think the world of them. Her last day will be March 8th. However, she has graciously offered, and I have aggressively accepted, her assistance in this interim basis and during this period of transition. So we already have a lot of great candidates thanks to Carrie. She's helped nurture and mentor that. And we would like to take a few minutes to recognize Carrie and her contributions to the district. So Carrie, turning off your camera won't make this any less embarrassing. So, but I just want to say thank you to Carrie. You know, I've only been able to work with her now for a little over 2 years. And a huge chunk of that has been under this cloud of the pandemic and so many other stressors that the district has faced during this time. And I just have appreciated being able to work with Carrie during this time. And there are others, though, that are here that have worked with Carrie for much longer and have known Carrie much longer than I have. And I would, anyone who wants to recognize that, you can do so. You can speak up here. What we're going to do is we're going to play a little video. So Andrea, if you could play that, and then I would invite others to speak up and share their Carrie Pack stories. So I would invite, frankly, Paul. You know, you've known Carrie for well, I won't say how long. I know it's a long time, and I invite you to share a few words.
Well, thank you, Tom. I'm missing Carrie already. That was quite a video, and I have so many mixed emotions here. So yeah, Carrie and I first met back when we were working together at Siegestrom Hill long enough ago that I had a full head of hair. And Carrie and I have always described each other as she was the older sister that I didn't want, and I was the younger brother and she didn't want. But in all fairness, it's been such a pleasure working with Carrie in her role as chief engineer. We just were able to bring the two parts of the organization together. And you all might remember a few years back when we were presenting to the board kind of that risk assessed CIP. And it was so much fun just kind of working hand in hand with Carrie and her team, pulling that together. And I think we did a really good job I think we provided a really good product, and just from everything she's done, got us oriented with the Grabhorn Reservoir. That thing was on scaffolding, and now it's a very cost-effective facility for the district. Built a team. Her team is strong, and she cares for her people. She cares for the folks she works with. Carrie, we're going to miss you, but you're not going to be far. We've already committed to each other that we're going to obviously stay in touch as we did after we had left CH. We stayed in touch, and we'll continue to do that. So, Carrie, all the best, and Tom, thank you for giving me this opportunity to sing her praises. She's the best.
Yes, thank you, and that's enough. We can just go on with the rest of the meeting.
Well, I don't know if any of the commissioners want.
I don't think we quite can go on with the meeting, Terry, because I, like Paul, trace my friendship with you back to our CH2M and City of Portland days, and I just want to say that I really value those times and appreciate everything you've done. And I wish you weren't going, but people got to do what they got to do. So all the best to you, and just all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernice.
This is Jim Doan. There's a couple of things that I really appreciate Carrie doing. One is she was absolutely reliable. There wasn't any hedging. If the idea was a bad idea, she signaled that to us, especially if they were my ideas. And the other thing I like is the enthusiasm that she brought to the job. Often chief engineers tend to be very dry, I don't know, having been one for 20 years, fact-oriented. But it seemed to me that she embraced her staff and caused them to do things that they didn't think they were capable of doing. And I really appreciate that. Plus all the physical things you've done for the district. But mostly I appreciate the impact you had on the district, on the staff, and on the people we deal with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Dunn. Those are very kind words. Thank you.
Well, Carrie, I couldn't let the other commissioners say things without also saying a few things as well. I don't think I've known you quite as long as some of the people that have spoken, but darn near as long. And I've always enjoyed working with you. There were so many things between Clean Water Services and the City of Beaverton. I enjoyed every interaction, no matter how difficult and ugly a thing would start. I think between you and I, we were able to straighten out a lot of messes. And I knew that if I was going to be able to work with you, that we would figure out a logical conclusion and not have it go into the crazy that sometimes happens between two organizations that have what should I say, legacy characters that hang on and create problems for lesser senior employees as we were in those days. So again, I want to thank you for those years, Carrie, that you were a problem solver and a great colleague to work with. I also found out recently that you're a CASA, that is a court-appointed special advocate, which in my book, I mean, you're always high in my book in terms of my estimation of your character, but just hearing that you're a CASA, you're doing the work of the angels in doing that, knowing that the foster care system and the other problems that we have in our family courts, having dedicated CASAs, which I'm sure you are. It's an incredible service to the community, and it's all volunteer. So thank you, Carrie. I hate to think that you're not going to be at the district, but I hope our paths will cross in the future, and I wish you all the best. And again, thank you for your service to the district. A lot has changed in the last 6 years, and you've been instrumental in guiding everything in the best direction. So thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Jim. I will say that one thing that we didn't find a logical conclusion at CWS is the AutoZone at Cornell and Murray Boulevard. You remember that project? That was a crazy, crazy project. But everything else, I completely agree. I think when times were difficult, we've found even more, reasonable way to find the right solutions, and really did enjoy working with you at City of Beaverton, and really enjoyed serving you as your chief engineer for the past 6 years. Thank you.
Carrie, this is Todd Sanders, and I also wanted to say thank you on a couple of levels. First, the one thing that I've always noticed is whenever the program was in budgetary crisis, the first statement made was, "We need Carrie to figure out a solution," and you always have found a solution, which is an amazing thing to do and not an easy thing to do. And it was usually asked of you to find ways of cutting, saving, changing, and manipulating. And that's not easy to do, especially for an engineer. But what I really wanted to recognize about you, Carrie, is I'll try not to cry, how someone can come to another country, not speak the language, become not only a language speaker, but pursue a career in one of the most challenging fields that there can be, and then reach the level of expertise that you have. You're a mentor for engineers, you're a mentor for people, and you're a mentor for women. You're a wonderful person, and it's been a true honor to know you and to get to spend this little bit of time that I have with you. And I have such respect for you as a person and such respect for you as an engineer. You are really an amazing individual. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanders. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Thank you.
So Carrie, I can help you. You could just simply say you've changed your mind. And, I can tear up this letter here and we're all good. So,
It'd be really embarrassing after all these accolades.
No, we're fine. We'll you wouldn't be embarrassing at all, right? I'm sure everybody would agree that she's allowed to do that, right? Well, again, thank you, and I have appreciated working with you, Carrie, and the more I learned, like Commissioner Duggan was sharing your role and CASA, I had no idea. I was like, wow, that is the work of angels right there. So thank you for that, your service, dedication, and we will be working with you in the future, as you know, and it wouldn't surprise me if you're back in front of this board giving presentations, just probably in a little bit different capacity. So, all right. Thank you, and we'll continue on now. So not leaving the stage, turning it back over to, well, first turn it over to Carrie to introduce her staff, presenting both the safety minute and the department report.
So thank you again for all those kind words. I hope, I know I'll be back, so we'll see each other again. All of the things that you talked about, is only possible because of the great staff that we have at the district. And one of those staff is Sarah Alton. You might remember Sarah was the Employee of the Year several years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. She's an engineering associate. She's delivered a presentation to the board a couple of times, and I've asked her to come today to give you, Commissioner Sanders and those engineers, I'm going to give you forgiveness or apologize to Commissioner Bagnall first, because all of the engineers on the board is going to love Sarah's presentation tonight about our department report. Commissioner Bagnall might, I don't know, we'll see what happens. But Sarah gave this presentation, a much longer presentation to at the PNWS conference, one of the quarterly conferences that we had last year. And I just thought it was so, it was one of the better presentations I've seen, not only virtually, but also just as from a content standpoint. So I asked Sarah if she would be willing to do that. And I asked Tom if we could take a slightly different turn at, rather than just looking at the projects, looking at some of the things on how we do what we do. So Sarah typically does all things development services. She is our development services department, basically. But I'm looking forward to getting you guys introduced to her with some of the other things that she's been working on. So without further ado, I'm going to turn off my camera and mic, and Sarah, take it away.
Well, thank you, Carrie, for the introduction, and good evening, President Sanders and commissioners. I feel a little uncomfortable in front of the camera after a long day, but here we go. So thank you, Carrie, for the opportunity, and just go into the safety minute. And one of the things I wanted to focus on as the engineering and operations department is how we do some safety by design. I think it's a great look into the into how we do things and how our department interacts with one another. So as a development services reviewer, one of the things that our operators came to me with a comment on was these valves that are located under street barricades for future development when a new subdivision will connect. They came to me and said, we are not able to get our trucks to turn these valves, and so our operators are having to climb around these barricades, which is a slip, trip, fall hazard for them. And so, it seems to me, well, let's make this really easy change, and we just won't allow these valves to be located under barricades anymore. And so when I do these plan reviews, these blow-off valves get pushed back into the pavement, and all of our inspectors, the 2 that we have, actively enforce this requirement. And so just by one small change, comment that was brought up to the engineering team, we were able to make things a lot safer for our operators. So that's the safety by design, just a real world example for the district. When I click this forward slide, did it go forward, Paul?
No, Sarah, you need to take control. I think you're just, there you go.
Okay, sorry. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so moving on into the department report, like Carrie mentioned, this was a presentation I gave to the AWWA subsection conference a few months back. So I'm a little rusty on the presentation, and we've tweaked it for this audience tonight and updated and freshened some things. What the presentation is how we implemented HDPE for our engineers and operators at the district, and how we could move forward with some in-house design and construction, and just add another tool to our toolbox for cost efficiencies on water main replacements. So we kind of started from square one with HDPE as an option for the engineering team and the operations team. So we kind of learned this process together. So for those of you who are engineers or maybe aren't familiar with it, HDPE is high density polyethylene pipe. It's that black flexible pipe that you'll see, and it's used for almost any type of utility for underground piping needs. It works really well in pressure applications as well as gravity applications. It's been used for water and other fluids since the 1950s, so has a long history of success. And people prefer it because it's durable, it's really resistant to corrosion, and it has a lot of long-term cost benefits. So one of the questions that we asked was, when is it going to be the correct pipe material for us to use? I mean, obviously, we all know that HDPE, sorry, I shouldn't say obviously, we all know. Engineers all know that HDPE is primarily used in boring operations. The Willamette Water Supply has used it to cross major, well, Willamette Water Supply hasn't, but our projects for the Willamette Water Supply, like the Metzger North-South Fire Line, we've used HDPE to cross major roads. And we've also used it to cross through wetlands to mitigate our impacts to those. But we were specifically looking at how can we use HDPE for smaller diameter mains and get our operators involved with this new material. So we started this project as a pilot project to see, are we realizing any cost savings, and is this actually easier for us to install than traditional ductile iron pipe and open trench construction? So then we had to plan the program once we kind of had this idea, this seed of an idea. So the first thing that we wanted to do to approach HDPE for the district was to get training. A lot of the engineers and operations staff attended what was called the HDPE Roadshow, and we learned about HDPE there and kind of saw our first real world examples of how a district could use this in-house. Once we had that training, we wanted to get initial buy-in and develop a pilot program, which really was convincing Carrie and others more senior than us that this was a good idea for us to try. And we presented the pilot program to her and others on the leadership team for approval. In order to do so, we needed a list of representative projects, and just highlighted two on here. The first one that we did, and then the most recent one that we've done. So Damascus Street is a street in the north part of our district, pretty close to the West Hills. And then 89th and Spruce is located in the Metzger portion of our district. So two very different areas, two very different applications, and we've had a whole host of projects in between these two. These are kind of our bookends of what we've done so far. So once we were like, okay, we have projects that we can use this for, let's start the design process. And because it was new for us, we wanted to reach out to the industry and get some expert advice. So we touched base with Ferguson Waterworks, who supply a lot of the HDPE parts. They do a lot of construction with it and help with the training and supplying of anything and all things related to HDPE. So once we were able to get the design, we kind of put the parameters on what training our operators would need. Knowing that we were mostly looking at small diameter, we selected a training program that was just up to 4 inches in diameter for them to get trained and certified. And then the other thing that we looked at was a cost benefit business case analysis of if we were going to purchase the equipment or rent the equipment. Ultimately, we decided that we were going to purchase the equipment, and we also purchased all the supplies that we would need to install these in-house. And we'll touch base on that in just a little bit about why we made that decision. And then once we had all of that, it was time to construct the project. For the first project that we did, of course, we had Ferguson come out and help us make sure that all of the construction methods that we were using was what we had been trained on, and that all of our operators were doing everything properly, just to make sure, okay, we know what we're doing. We're not just out here on our own. And that was a really good experience for everybody. And then the last thing that we always do is talk with the operators, make sure that we're getting their feedback, the honest feedback. A lot of the times, the best way to do that is to actually be present with them in the field as they're installing things, and just to hear with open ears and to take that criticism about your design, which is really hard as an engineer to hear you haven't done it perfectly. But it always helps us to improve as a district. So the next thing that we were looking at in the design process was the different types of HDPE. There's a lot of variety out there. And so based off of our district, we selected this DR9 PE 4710 iron pipe size. And that's a lot of acronyms. Really, all that means is this pipe will work for the pressure ranges that we have in our district in pretty much all applications. So it gives us a not too overly designed pipe thickness. We can use it in pretty much anywhere in our district. And that also allows us to get some economies of scale by purchasing this pipe in bulk, and then maintaining some of this pipe on hand as well as fittings in this size. We can keep those in our warehouse for any repairs that we need. So when you see that, don't be scared by that. That just was a decision that we made, and really helps us to be effective as a district. And then iron pipe size, we chose that because it has the same outer diameter as our ductile iron pipe. So all of our current fittings that we have that we use all the time will work with HDPE. We don't have to get special fittings to reduce down to the ductile iron pipe size. And some of the other questions that we had in the design process was, how do we keep our, how do we install our service lines? We want to use our metallic service lines, our copper service lines for our locators. Do we have some sort of butt fusion or electrofusion fittings with the HDPE that then connect to those copper service lines? How exactly is that going to work? And then we also had really similar questions about the appurtenances like air release valves and blow-offs. What type of fittings are going to work for us, and how does thrust restraint work? These are all the questions that engineers love to ask, like really getting into the details of something like that. When you read a HDPE manual, it doesn't really get into how do we make something work for our organization. They're looking at the design and giving you the most optimal, perfect scenario how to do something. But when you put it in the context of how are our operators going to do that, you get into a different ballgame. And so that's why we really wanted to work through these details with someone with experience like Ferguson Waterworks, and to get our operators involved in the process ahead of time. And then finally, if we're talking about cathodic protection and HDPE being really corrosion resistant, it's going to give us a long pipe life. How do we protect the service lines and the meters? If those are going to still be metallic, how do we protect those? We want to protect our investment in our HDPE pipeline, but not at the expense of those metallic pieces. And so we made the decision that we're going to stick with our standard anode installation for those to protect the service lines and the meters for our customers. And that just makes a really robust system for us with the HDPE main and those cathodically protected metallic services. So here's some of the more engineering nitty-gritty details. We started out with this number 1. This was our service detail. Based off of some feedback we got from Ferguson Waterworks, we wanted to use butt fusion welds just because they can be cheaper fittings, more economical to get, and the butt fusion weld can be done out of the trench, so above ground for our operators, so a little bit more ergonomical for them. But what we found when we did this is it made this top part where you see the 3x1 reducer and the corporation stop, that made that really long. And so we realized that we were putting what's called a moment arm on the main pipe itself. The weight of those fittings became so heavy that we had to find a way to support it underneath so it didn't pull on the pipe and cause leaks. So we kind of went back to the drawing board with our operators and thought maybe an electrofusion saddle would be better because it can be closer into the main. And so we went through this design progression, ended at number 2, and we had Wallace Engineering help us with the design of this. They drafted this up, not TVWD. And the actual part that we use now looks a lot like this number 3 part. And it's a double strapped saddle with the threads you can see right here. And so it works exactly how we tap a ductile iron pipe. Our operators are very familiar with it because it works in almost exactly the same way. And it's just a really nice solution for us to be able to do things in a way that we're so used to as a business. And it works really well. The electrofusion fittings, you can just plug a machine in and it heats it up exactly for how long it needs to be, just by the scan of a barcode. So very slick. All right, next slide. So another engineering detail is the blow-off design. I think this one is really similar to the services where we tried to do the butt fusion as well. And we found the same thing was happening. This is just so long that we're having issues with supporting the pipe. And so we switched everything up to look more like this. This is really similar to our standard 2-inch blow-off detail. We just have, instead of the butt fusion, we found this butt fused MJ adapter with MJ gland. We found this part there and we're able to just go into our standard 2-inch blow-off. So just continually improving and finding ways that our operators can build things in a way that they're used to, a way that we are very skilled in doing, and just changing a little bit at a time so that we can continually get better at this. So we also needed to purchase the equipment to be able to build those things that I just showed you. And so what we had to do to justify equipment purchase was to determine the work that we were doing, the frequency of the projects that we were expecting, looking at the types of equipment that would help our operators to be successful, that were available in the local supplier world. And then we had to write a justification memo to purchase this equipment as something to have in our repertoire, just like we do with our dump trucks and everything like that. And then, of course, we got management approval for those things. So the two pieces of equipment that we purchased, one is called a 1 to 4 inch pit bull. This is our butt welding machine. What you do is you stick 2 pieces of pipe, one on each side, and you bring those together on a hot plate for a set amount of time. And then you pull the hot plate out and then it fuses those 2 pieces of pipe together when you basically squish them together in the machine. And then this is the other machine we have for electrofusion. This is the Raptor electrofusion machine and scanner. And each one of our electrofusion parts has a barcode on it that you scan. And then you put these leads onto that electrofusion part, press a button, and it goes for a set amount of time to set that part. Basically the same as how this machine works, but with a little bit more flexibility. When we purchased this equipment, it was back in 2018, and we spent just under $10,000 for the equipment. When we purchased the equipment, the weekly rental rates for these 2 machines was estimated at $1,000. We've used the equipment for more than 6 projects in-house, and each project has been about 1 to 2 weeks in duration. So Commissioner Bagnall, there's your math for the evening. I'm sure Paul could whip that number out very quickly, but you can see that that $10,000 was a good investment for us. And then the training for operators was probably one of the things that they enjoyed most. They were able to go to a training course, and at Ferguson Waterworks, they went there in person and got hands-on experience and training to actually do the welds and look at them and ensure that they were done correctly. And they went and got this training, which meets an ASTM standard for heat fusion equipment operator. The certification lasts for 1 year, and it allows our operators to fuse pipe up to 6 inches in diameter. The operations staff are responsible for maintaining their certificates, but as the engineering department, we need to make sure that we're providing them with ongoing projects, because that's really the most effective training. It's a technical skill, and it's it's something that we need to practice regularly. The good news is that we have plenty of opportunities, plenty of pipe replacement projects that I'm sure Carrie has talked to you guys all at great length about. So we're going to keep on maintaining this skill set for both our engineers and our operators. And then the examples that we have. This is the Damascus water main replacement, that first project that we did. You can see these 3 pictures I have. The first one, this is a private road that actually crossed 3 or 4 different properties. They privately own this road and maintain the surface of it. And so after we had about 6 main breaks up here, they were really familiar with all of our operators on a first name basis. So we really wanted to be able to replace their pipe without destroying the road that they paid to have installed. So we decided we're going to do this HDPE pilot, and we will subcontract out to a directional drill company, and they were able to keep the size of the disturbance to a minimum. You can see this exit pit right here is probably about 3 by 2. And then the entrance pit is a little bit bigger, but really much less impactful to that neighborhood than doing a traditional open trench method. We were able to get all of this HDPE pipe fused together, pre-tested before it even went into the ground. And that just saved a lot of time for our operators being up in this really tight, narrow path. I mean, even the UPS drivers have difficulty with this. So HDPE was kind of a no-brainer in this situation for us. And then the lessons that we learned, pressure testing for HDPE is definitely not the same as ductile iron pipe. I'm not going to go into all of these technical details, but one of the things is that HDPE, because it is a plastic pipe, it can react to temperature. So when you put our system water into it, it can expand and contract based on that temperature. And so that makes pressure testing difficult, something that we had to gain familiarity with as we did it. There's an initial expansion phase for the pipe. So you have to continuously add water as necessary to maintain the test pressure for up to 4 hours for that initial expansion phase. And then when you actually are testing to make sure that the pipe holds tight and doesn't leak, you reduce the pressure by 10 psi and stop adding water. And then you monitor the pressure for 1 hour. If it holds, then the pipe has passed. That's different than what we do with ductile iron pipe. With ductile iron pipe, you're just going to pump it up to that test pressure and hold it for an hour to determine if there's any leaks on that pipe. So it was really different, kind of threw us for a loop, just actually seeing it happen, even though we knew that that was what was going to happen. It felt very strange to us. So I think that's something that we learned, and now that we're more comfortable with it, we can work with it. So it's been an experience. I think that our crews have done a really good job with it. We've had really good support from our leadership team and Carrie as our chief engineer for doing a pilot project like this. And we do have some analysis on the cost savings that we've realized. Unfortunately, with the COVID pandemic, the cost of HDPE has really increased, as well as all the other materials. So the data that we have is unfortunately no longer as valid as it was right when we first did the analysis. But that is all I have for you guys tonight. Thank you for listening to this technical presentation, and I hope that you at least learned a little bit more about how our department works and the things that we're doing as a team.
Thank you, Sarah. That is much appreciated. And with that, I'm turning this back over to President Sanders.
Great, thank you. And yes, thank you, Sarah. That was interesting. Thank you from all the engineers for making it just the right flavor. All right, so the next thing up will be Commissioner Communications. and we will have reports of meetings attended. So we'll begin with Commissioner Bagnell.
Hi, President Sanders, and I think for maybe the first time ever, I was like a total slacker last month. I have no meetings to report except for tonight's board meeting. That's it.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Bagnell. Commissioner Doan.
Yes, well, I had the work session at the beginning of the month, tonight's meeting, and then toward the end of last month, we had the WIFIA, the Willamette Intake Facilities. And I might just say that that project is on budget and is on time. And it has nothing to do with the advisory committee, but mostly to do with the timing of the project. And for the most part, except for punch list, we're done. We're still dealing with water rights issues, but I think we'll be dealing with that for the rest of our lives. So anyway, that's what's going on with the WIFIA.
All right. Well, thank you, Commissioner Doan. Do you have any other meetings to report? Was that the last one? Don't want to interrupt you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had the workshop, the first of the month, and tonight's meeting. I did not attend the Lowell Business Association meeting because too much was going on in my life that day.
Understood. Thank you, Commissioner Doan. Next will be Commissioner Duggan.
This past month, after our last regular board meeting, the very next day, on the 20th of January, there was a special meeting of the Willamette Water Supply System Board to approve a reservoir and pipeline project. On the first, I attended the board work session where we received the WWSS and other updates. On the 2nd of February, I attended the Regional Water Providers Consortium Board meeting, which was our regular third of the year meeting where we approved the budget. On the 3rd, we had our regular Willamette Water System Supply System Board meeting. On the 8th, I met with CEO Tom Hickman and President Todd Sanders to plan for the agenda for tonight's meeting and then tonight's meeting. So while I wasn't quite the slacker that Commissioner Bagnell was, it was a fairly busy month, but nothing extravagant. So that's it for my February report.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Duggan. For myself, I met on the 24th with Tom Hickman to discuss what was going on with the plan for the Willamette Water Supply budget, cost overrun, whatever we want to call it these days. Everybody's fully aware of it. And then, of course, we met, as all of you have mentioned, the first for our monthly board work session. On the 8th, I met with the other partners for the Willamette River Water Coalition, where it was mostly partner communication, some website update information. Not a lot to share with regards to that meeting. This time, the next meeting for that group will be in June. And then I met with Norm Eater on the 10th to talk about a presentation that was made this morning, which I'll mention again in a second. And then the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th, I attended the virtual SDAO conference, where I participated in the effective board leadership meeting. Then I attended the water caucus meeting, and then the business meeting on the last day, the last hours of the last day on Saturday the 12th, which for, I believe, the first time, the vote was nothing more than a yay or a nay. There were no interested parties in doing anything beyond which would already been offered in terms of board members for the SDAO, the SDAO board in the future. So that vote was quite quick. Then on the 14th, I again met with Tom to get an update on hirings and to talk about the meeting that was held this morning with our partners Hillsborough and Beaverton and our legislative support or our lobby group um, to meet with some of the heads of various groups within the state's leadership underneath kind of the governor's representatives to talk about looking for opportunities, grants, and available dollars to help us mitigate some of the costs associated with the inflationary impacts on the Willamette Supply Project. So that meeting went very well. It was well attended, but not only TVWD, and again, Dave Kraska made a wonderful presentation. Tom also made a nice presentation, and then Nikki Iverson from the city of Hillsborough and Chad Lynn from our partners at the city of Beaverton also spoke in support of looking for support, as the best way to describe it. So now that they know that there's a conversation in place, and we are eager and willing to work very hard to find opportunities that our lobbying groups at CFM, as they appropriately put it, turned over every rock and stone looking for different opportunities to reduce the impact of the costs on the Willamette Supply Project. And then tonight's board meeting. Alrighty, so that was a long statement about 1 hour meeting. Alrighty, that being said, we'll move on to our next item, which are topics to be raised by the commissioners. And I will ask our fellow board members, do we have any topics to be raised by commissioners? Not hearing any, then we will move on to the next item in this evening's agenda, which is our public comment. Public comment time is set aside for persons wishing to address the board on items the consent agenda and matters not on the agenda. Additional public comment will be invited on agenda items as they are presented. Do we have any persons this evening who would like to comment? All right, not hearing any, then I'm going to move on to our next agenda item this evening, which will be our consent agenda. Our consent agenda items are considered to be routine and may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Any board members may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Any items requested to be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion will be considered immediately after the board has approved those items which do not require discussion. This evening for our consent agenda items is to approve the January 19th, 2022 regular meeting minutes and to approve the February 1st, 2022 work session minutes. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented?
This is Commissioner Duggan, so moved.
Thank you.
This is Jim Doan, second.
Very good. So we have a motion from Commissioner Duggan and a second from Commissioner Doan. I'll now ask that our district recorder to please provide the roll call vote.
Commissioner Bagnell,
I understand from past questions that it is okay for me to vote on the work session items, even though I was not in attendance for that. And so I vote aye.
Commissioner Doan,
Aye.
Commissioner Duggan,
Aye.
Commissioner Sanders.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. The motion passes. The next agenda item is our business agenda. And this evening, we will discuss to consider adopting Resolution 02-22, which is a resolution amending system development charges for the Tualatin Valley Water District and declaring an effective date. We'll receive this report from our CFO, Paul Matthews. Paul?
Good evening, President Sanders, Commissioners. This is somewhat of a routine matter as well. Each year we come before you to update the system development charges consistent with the district's system development charge ordinance. Tonight I want to give you a quick overview of our SDCs, the process that we use to adjust it, and a little bit of a history on the adjustments. And then I want to talk about the proposed adjustment to the SDCs. I'll show you a comparison to other communities that we have so that you can get a sense of what our SDCs are, as well as to SDCs for similar services within the area. So first, a little bit about our SDCs. They're provided under Ordinance 0112, which the board enacted on August 17th of 2012. In that ordinance, it authorizes the SDCs. It requires the district to review SDCs annually, and it provides that we can make an adjustment in SDCs based on changes in the engineering news record construction cost index for Seattle, and that's what we are doing tonight. Everything within the ordinance complies with Oregon law as well. We did update the SDCs based on the change to the engineering news record. This year, the change, consistent with some of the other costs that we're seeing, is a little bit higher than we've seen in the recent past. It increased by 6.2% from December 2020 to December 2021. We always use that same time frame when we're escalating the SDCs. So it's a 6.52% increase. And this proposed SDCs that we have will be effective on March 1st, 2022. Consistent with prior years. The SDCs that we have based on meter size up to 1.5 inches, they're presented here. You can see the increase is about $538 for the 5/8 by 3/4 inch meter, which is the standard meter that most single family residential units have. And you can see the SDCs for other meter sizes here. Again, it's a 6.52% increase. There are roundings because we come to the nearest dollar, but that's essentially the math behind those calculations. In addition to that, for meters larger than 1.5 inches, we have a formula that is applied to captures the peak day component of customers' demand, as well as a storage component for the storage facilities that we have, the reservoirs. The SDC formula is essentially the same. We calculate the number of ERUs based on the demands of the customers, and that will go up at that same $538 per ERU, the same that would be used for the single family residential customer. So currently our SDC is $8,257. That's currently TVWD's SDC. With this increase, based on the engineering news record construction cost index, we'd be about $8,800. It still keeps TVWD in about the middle of the pack for SDCs as compared to other neighboring water utilities. We also look at how we compare to other services. So the $8,800 for water. If we look at sanitary sewer, about $6,100, stormwater, another $600, transportation development tax. This is all for a single family residential home, about $9,600. Parks and Rec, about $12,000. You can see how we stack up there as compared to other service providers. So that staff recommends the board adopt resolution 0222, a resolution amending the system development charges for the Tualatin Valley Water District and declaring an effective date. And with that, I can answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Yes, Jim Doan, Commissioner Doan.
Yeah, this may sound silly. Where did we ever end up with increasing the size of the line for in-house fire sprinklers? I just can't put my hands on exactly where we ended up, or if we didn't ever do anything, or I was just curious.
Yes, we did do something to account for the fact that the inline fire service, part of that is essentially to cover the fire protection costs. So we do have an allowance. I can look that up and we can talk about that either next meeting or even at a work session to get the details. But we did make an adjustment to that because we do want to encourage people to put in-house sprinklers. It's more cost effective from a capacity requirement to provide that sprinkler immediately on a fire than it is to have the fire trucks roll up and connect to one of our hydrants outside the home. So we do encourage that, and the SDC for those is adjusted accordingly. But there is a slight increase in the charge to account for the increased demand that they do and can put on our system. Actually, if Sarah is still on this meeting, she may be able to answer that question specifically. Don't want to put her on the spot, but Sarah, if you do have an answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. The cost of a fire sprinkler meter, we look at what their water meter size would be without the fire sprinkler. So they go through our worksheet. If it's a 5/8 inch fixture is where they end up, a 5/8 inch meter, but they need a 3/4 inch for fire suppression. They pay the 5/8 inch system development charge plus 18% of the difference between the 5/8 and the 3/4 inch. So it's a little bit of math exercise there. But they do pay slightly more than a 5/8 inch, but definitely less than a full 3/4 inch.
Thank you very much.
Well,
I appreciate the fact that we're doing this.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, not hearing any. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 02-22, a resolution amending system development charges for the Tualatin Valley Water District and declaring an effective date?
This is Jim Doan, so moved.
And this is Commissioner Bagnell. I will second.
Great, thank you. District Recorder, could we please provide a roll call vote, Debbie?
Commissioner Bagnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Doan,
Aye.
Commissioner Duggan,
Aye.
Commissioner Sanders.
Aye. All right. Thank you, everybody. The motion passes. And now to agenda item number 3 this evening, our informational presentation. We're going to receive an update on our customer information service portal demo and customer outreach strategy from Andrew Karlstrom. And this must be a sign that things are getting close because we're hearing from Andrew quite often now. So that's exciting.
Well, thank you. Yes, we are getting closer. So good evening, President Sanders, Board of Commissioners, and members of the public. So tonight's update includes presentations by 2 of the project team members on really public-facing aspects of the CIS implementation. But before we proceed, as I always do, I want to remind everybody what we're doing here. We're replacing TVWD's aging customized utility billing system with a commercial off-the-shelf CIS, or customer information system. Really important for this project. It's a partnership with Clean Water Services, in which we're sharing cost decision-making, as well as ownership of the ultimate system. So we've got 2 primary items to share tonight. One is information on the customer portal for the CIS, and also information on the outreach plan for the transition. I want to note that this is a really talented team we have, comprised of staff from TVWD, Clean Water Services, our vendor Open International, and our consultant, which is AAC Utility Partners. The team's working very hard to build a solid foundation for improvements to services for both agencies. The two members of the team who are with us tonight, Heather Ann Brommel and Frank Reed, are representing the project on behalf of both agencies. We're really fortunate that they're both on this project. They're making solid contributions on this initiative. So Heather Ann's going to provide you first with information on the portal, and then Frank's going to go over elements of the customer communications plan. I want to provide a brief intro on these. So on the portal, just as a reminder, the scope of the implementation in terms of what we're getting on the product itself, it's CIS, batch processing, and customer self-service portal. And the presentation that we're going to have tonight, this is only the initial overview of the portal. We'll have more detailed information as we get closer to go live. And then on the customer communications plan, we wanted to give you this initial look far in advance of go live. And of course, we're preparing customers of both agencies for the transition. And as Frank will indicate to you, this was developed collaboratively by both agencies. So with that, I'm going to have us move on to the customer portal, and Heather Ann.
Hi, thank you, Andrew. And hello, President Sanders and commissioners. My name is Heather Ann Brommel. I joined the district in May of this last year as a business analyst focusing on the CIS implementation. My background is in large-scale system implementations and process improvement initiatives. And I'm excited to be here this evening to share a preview of the new customer portal that will come with our CIS. From what I've experienced, staff here are dedicated to delivering excellent service to our customers in person, on the phone, and through social media outreach. Our new self-service portal allows customers access to information about their profile, services that they have, and account or payment information anytime, anywhere. This portal provides another way that we can connect and interact with our customers on their terms. The portal allows customers to make service requests, pay bills, and enroll in programs like rebates. They can also opt into paperless billing or manage an automatic bill pay. It also provides another platform for us to promote key messages and updates. The portal allows customers to make changes directly to their account or to request a service call. This means that we will need our customers to register and opt in to using the portal through a simple 3-step process: register, verify, and connect. It's my understanding that it's been about 4.5 or 5 years since we've asked customers to go through a registration process, so we don't believe this is going to be a big hardship for anyone. To register, you enter your name, email address, and create a personalized password. Customers will be automatically sent a verification code to the email address that they provide. Then they connect to their existing account using their account number and either billing or service zip code. Customer accounts will not be changing as a part of this implementation. And part of the rollout plan for customers is an overview of these steps, including pointing out where they can locate their current account number. We wanted to give you a feel for what this new customer offering is. So we're going to give a live demo a try. Here we are. A quick PSA, this is a mocked up testing environment, so usages, balances, anything that you see is not real. It's really been designed for testing and demonstration purposes only. So this is the home screen of our portal. It's been designed to pull your attention quickly and easily to know if you have a current balance, and then also to make a payment. your eyes should really naturally be drawn to that Make Payment button. The overall layout and design is to present all of your options transparently on the screen for you, grouped by similar requests, like customer enrollments. Everything that you can access quickly on this homepage is also categorized and listed for you up in this top navigation bar. For example, billing history, paperless billing enrollment, or payment plans enrollment, they're also listed here underneath this billing navigation item up in that top navigations bar. Since this homepage intuitively directs us to want to make a payment, let's do it. So I'm going to click that payment button, and I'm going to go ahead and select that I'd like to use a credit card, and I'm going to go ahead and pay the total amount. This is a verification letting you know you'd selected your payment date, a reminder of what you wanted to do, and it also allows you to store credit cards for future or recurring use. As I said, with all mock data, we also have mock credit card numbers, so nothing that's entered here is real or usable or repeatable anywhere. But after entering in your credit card number and information, it knew that that card was a MasterCard. It's bringing up a confirmation of those payment details. This is that icon where you can save this card for future payments if you want. So it would show up in a drop-down list for you. And we can go ahead and submit this payment. Oh, just like live demos, sometimes they don't always work. This transaction was declined. It didn't like that. So you would need to go in and do another payment. Once you make a successful payment, what you see is a confirmation screen, and that payment would reduce the total amount due, and it'll be logged in a payment history. You can see there was a successful payment that was also made this evening, shortly before, right? 5:36, shortly before this meeting adjourned.
Heather, I shouldn't have given you my credit card to use. I'm sorry.
I know, right? Always. Like, it's maxed out now. I mean, I did go shopping beforehand. So on the lower half of the screen, this is really where you can find some graphical representations of your data. So customers can see their usage tracked over time, and they can toggle back and forth to change the dates that'll appear. And all of that data is also stored in a chart below that'll quickly export into Excel. So there's similar views for billing history, payment history. You can look at neighborhood comparisons. So on the billing history, with a simple click to view your details, you can see specific information and a breakdown of those billed amounts and charges. So you can really look at, exactly what components are making up each bill. Back on the home page, these quick access items have been selected to make it easy to request a start or a stop to your service. Or you can update and edit your profile information, or you can enroll in our rebates programs. Customer enrollments are accessible just under the quick access items, and customers can simply opt into paperless billing. All that they have to do is enter their preferred email address, they'll enter a verification code, and then they've enrolled themselves in paperless billing. Through this portal, customers can interact with us when it's convenient for them by just using this simple make a request icon. Some of your information, like your account number and your name, are going to auto-populate in. So all they have to do is choose a request type from a small list of common needs and go ahead and provide some comments. If needed, they can attach images or files, and they can even go ahead and request to receive a callback number if they want to enter their phone number. When you click submit, that request is sent directly into a queue that will be picked up by our customer service representatives during the next available business hours. And there's a slight confirmation letter letting you know that this request has been submitted successfully, but also the caveat, it may take up to 72 hours for a response. And that is an overview and a highlight of some of my favorite features of our new portal. I'm happy to take questions, or Paul can get us back to hear about the rollout plan.
Any questions from the board?
This is Jim Doan. I do a lot of bill paying for elderly people at church. Is there a way I can set up, or the person can set up to get a duplicate bill?
To get a yes. Yes, there are. You can have your bills. You can get a duplicate bill sent out to any location or billing address that that they would prefer.
Thank you very much. That's great help.
This is Commissioner Duggan. I had a question regarding our customer assistance program. Is there a way in this new system to quickly make a donation to our customer assistance program, or is that a feature that's coming later?
That is a feature that will be available when we go live. You can opt in to making a donation from the portal here. You can do either a one-time or you can set up a recurring donation as well.
Thank you. Good to know.
And Commissioner Duggan, that was one of our functional requirements when we did the procurement.
Yeah, I was looking at the screen and intrigued by the neighbor comparison. I'm sure that's something that will be well used by our customers, because I've gotten some inquiries about what is the average bill for a neighborhood X or Y, and I would say, well, it really is not as important as your comparison between your winter and your summer use, as opposed to what your neighbors are using. But that's a great feature, so that they can at least satisfy their curiosity if they're keeping up with the Joneses. So thank you.
All right, if there are no more questions, I will go ahead and start talking about our communications and outreach plan. So hello, commissioners. It's been a while, but it's great seeing you. My name is Frank Reed, and I'm the communications coordinator at Tualatin Valley Water District. So I'm also the communications liaison for the CIS team. So it's been a pleasure being on the team, and I've learned a lot, and it's been great. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is the communications plan and how we're actually going to educate the customers about what's coming up. So the initial goal of the communications plan is to educate all the Paymentus customers about the switch to Open SmartFlex and tell them what they need to know so they can jump in right away, start using the new system, and take advantage of all of the great features that it has. And then after the system has been in place for a couple months, we plan on doing a big push to increase the number of users. So to get people who aren't currently on Paymentus, but we think would be great for them to start using the features online. The reason we aren't doing the push when the system first goes live is because we really wanted to help stagger the call volumes for our customer service representatives and to give them a little bit more time to get used to the new system. There'll be a lot of changes coming in. There's a learning curve for everything. So we just wanted to give them just a little bit more time, and hopefully they wouldn't get a big deluge of phone calls. This plan was made in partnership with Clean Water Services communication staff and with the Tualatin Valley Water District's communication staff. So I want to stress that it has been 100% partnership between the two of us. We couldn't have done it without them. They are great partners. All the messages, everything that's in the plan, and basically everything that we've done has been in complete partnership with Clean Water Services, and they are great. We love working with them. We, both agencies, so TVWD and Clean Water Services, we all have a very strong commitment to open and transparent communications with our customers, and this plan does a really good job of reflecting that. So we feel like the more the customers know about the new system, the easier it will be for them to just get right in there, start using the new features, and just take advantage of all the great stuff that it has to offer. One of the other things that we are doing is we are going to use this as an opportunity to receive feedback from customers for the most effective methods of our communications. So as a lot of communications are, it's a two-way dialogue. We're going to listen to them, they're going to listen to us, and we're going to really ask them, you know, what did we do well? What else would you like to see in the future? And we're going to take these lessons learned from the feedback to enhance our future communication processes. So the key messages in this plan will be the partner's need for this change. So basically, why are we doing this? You know, why are we moving from our old billing system and our old online system to our new one? How this will be beneficial to our customers and what they will be able to do in the new system. So Heather Ann just showed a lot of the great features. So whether it's being able to request to move in, whether it's payment assistance, or just asking a general question on, do I qualify for this rebates? This system will be a great way to do it. It's going to be super easy to use. It's going to be self-service. We live in a, I just want to go online and do it myself type of era right now. And this plan will let customers know how to do that exactly. Let's go to the next slide. So these are some of the ways that we're going to interact with our customers and tell them what's going on. So we are going to send a lot of messages in our Waterwords newsletter. So we've actually had one article in our last Waterwords. It's billed every other month, and we had one article in our last newsletter, which was January, February, and then we have another article coming up in our March, April newsletter. So you'll see a little bit of information about it in there. We are also going to refer customers to our website using what we call our bill message, which is just a little message that's printed directly onto the bill. We are going to have that link directly to a website with more information on it. And we're also going to print a little message on the outside of the envelopes. A lot of people, they get their bills, they don't open it, they just kind of maybe toss it on a table. I'm guilty of that myself. So hopefully what they will do is they'll look at the envelope and they'll say, oh, there's a new, you know, I'm going to have to do something online to pay my bill, something a little bit different. Hopefully they at least see that link and they'll go to our website and figure out what they need to do that way. When we do our big push to sign up new customers, we're going to include an insert with all of our bills. So it will remind the people that have already signed up about the great new system. It'll encourage people that haven't signed up yet to give it a shot and see if it works for them. Paperless customers, currently, they only receive our Waterwords newsletter by email. They don't receive a paper copy. So they will see the messages within the email, but we'll also send those customers direct emails with all the relevant key messages that we've agreed to with Clean Water Services. And once we do our larger push to sign up more customers, we'll send a direct email to all customers. So even people that have already signed up, they'll still probably get another one. So. Other strategies, they will include website banners for both TVWD and Clean Water Services website. We're going to do regular social media posts. So TVWD and Clean Water Services will use the same messages, but each agency will be responsible for determining which social media platforms they're going to use. So they use their social media one way, we often use our social media another way. They'll be the same messages, but we'll just be responsible for our own social media outreach. Hopefully you guys are all familiar with the Talking Water virtual demonstrations we've been giving for the last, I believe, year and a half. They've been pretty popular. A little bit after go live, we're going to have a live virtual demonstration on the new CIS and take questions and answers for customers. So we'll advertise that in our regular way. We plan on printing some signs and some banners that we could take to high customer traffic areas, reservoirs, different areas that we own where people walk by often. And then we're also going to print up some flyers that we will have available for distribution. There are some specific programs that will change because of our change to CIS. And we plan on conducting some targeted outreach directly for the customers who are enrolled in these programs. So what we're going to do is we will work closely with the Clean Water Services staff, figure out what type of outreach to give to these customers, figure out everything that they need to know, their specific key messages, and then we're going to work together on getting those messages out to those customers. So that is the communications plan in a nutshell. If you have any further questions, you can ask me now. You could shoot me or Andrew an email and he can get it to me. But now if you have any questions, let me know. I'd like to think the silence means that I answered all your questions in the first place. So.
Great, thanks, Frank. So the last thing tonight is we've got more items coming up in March and April. So at the March work session, I'll provide you with an update on the implementation schedule. And then at the April work session, a detailed project review presentation. So with that, any last comments or questions from the board? Be happy to entertain them. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. We'll see you again in a few weeks. It's good to see this starting to come into its landing pattern. That's awesome. Congratulations to all the members of your team. All right. So the last presentation of our evening will be an informational presentation update on the district's financial strategies from our CFO, my apologies, our CFO, Paul Matthews.
Well, good evening again, President Sanders and Commissioners. Much of the information I'm about to present to you, you've actually seen before, but we wanted to give this to you in a board meeting so that members of the public could have access to the information as well. And I do have some additional information that I will be presenting tonight too, but a lot of the information you will have seen before. This essentially comes from the conversation that Dave Kraska has brought to you about the challenges that we're seeing with the cost increases, the inflationary cost increases with the water supply program. And Dave Kraska presented information on this to the board in the past. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Just needless to say, it has affected the district's financial strategy, and essentially we're looking at about $200 million more to fund our share of that project. And how that lays out over time is presented in this graph. What I've shown here, the gray bars is the annual capital expenditures. This is capital improvements for the district to fund its share of the Willamette Water Supply System as well as its in-district CIP. The gray bars show what we had forecast when we brought you the financial plan that you approved, the 21-23 financial plan that you approved last May. The red striped bars are the current estimates of the capital improvements, considering the changes in the cost for the water supply program. And if you look here, essentially the district's capital needs has gone up over the 10-year period through 2031 by about $200 million. Important thing to note here is that most of that capital outlay is happening between now and 2026 when the Willamette program concludes its efforts. And as we went through our budget process, you might remember that we took a lot of effort to manage our costs because of the impacts that COVID-19 was having on our customers. We delayed more than $50 million of capital improvements as we prepared that 21-23 financial plan and budget. And we made a lot of savings in our personnel services and other parts of our operating budget. So we took a lot of that capital, moved it into the future, and this now, of course, is hitting us as an additional constraint on our financial plan. So I wanted to show you what the current forecast, given the capital improvements that we have, look like amongst the different kinds of expenditures, capital outlays that the district has. So what you see here in the blue bars, the top blue bars, that's the spending on the Willamette Water Supply System. The light gray bars just below that, so in fiscal year 22, the $40 million, that's, excuse me, that's spending on the Metzger Pipeline East, which is a TVWD project that the Willamette Water Supply Program is delivering for TVWD. It's the pipe that delivers water from the Willamette Water Supply System all the way down Shoals Ferry Road, comes into our Metzger service area, and then goes north, connects up to the Washington County supply line and delivers the water into our the northeast part of the district's system there at the Center Street facility. So between that, in the blue bar and the light gray bar, that is essentially money that we have committed for getting the Willamette program and getting the water to our customers. The dark gray bar that you see at the bottom is what we have left for all the district's capital improvements. And that's those improvements we have been pushing hard to defer as much as we can out past the 2029, 2030, 2031 timeframe, when our financial stress from investing in the Willamette Water Supply System is a little less. So we took a lot of measures actually over the past several years to shape our CIP to accommodate the Willamette program, and most recently as we prepare for the last biennium, to make those adjustments as well to address the COVID-19 difficulties. So where do we stand? There's a lot of information on this chart. I just want to highlight two things. This shows how much we had planned to borrow debt proceeds when we prepared the financial plan that was presented back last May that you approved, and what we're looking at now. So we were talking about $408 million of borrowed money. It would be about $388 million from our WIFI loan, another $20 million of traditional revenue bonds, and that would have funded the entire Willamette Water Supply Program, as well as our current CIP out through 2026. Now we're looking at that number being about $200 million higher. And a couple things to keep in mind. First is our bond ordinance that we have. We set actually a spending limit of about $600 million. So right now we have no concerns about the authorization to issue that debt. If we did, we might come back to the board at some future date and ask you to amend or to adopt another bond ordinance, but we have plenty of capacity in that right now. But the issue we have is our revenue stream that we have to pay off that debt. We need to make sure that we have sufficient revenues so we can show the bond market that we have the capacity to pay back the money that we are borrowing. The gray line that you see there is something that we call the net leverage ratio. It's not important really what that is, but it's a measure of the district's ability to, or it's a measure of the district's leverage, how much debt we have per unit of revenue. In this case, lower is better. The lower number better, higher numbers mean that we have more leverage, and that means that we have more, according to the market, we'd have more financial risk. The district actually has a policy in our financial management policies of setting that, which the board adopted, setting that at about 8 times. The market typically looks at an industry standard of about 7 times if we talk to our friends at the rating agencies. And it's important to note that the strategy that we have here actually exceeds both the 7 and 8. And I want to make the point that this is for a very short period of time. It's for a few years, and we have an easy explanation as to why that is, that we're actually transitioning off of Portland, and that the revenue that will be freed up from our fixed cost of Portland will be available to cover the district's cost. So we're comfortable with the financial strategy, even though it does exceed those limits, because it is for a very short period of time. Now we're looking at about $205 million of additional debt financing. I say about $205 million because that assumes it has a lot of assumptions how we would borrow it, where we'd get reserve funds, and whether we'd borrow reserve funds. But that's a good number to use for our planning purposes. At $205 million, that increase our annual debt service by about $12 million per year. So we're looking at what would $12 million kind of an impact that would have on the districts. And I'm showing 3 different appropriation categories that we have in our budget, just to give you a sense of what the impact would be of that $12 million on those appropriation categories. And really to answer the question, could we make cuts within the district's operating budget to come up with that additional $12 million to service the debt? And if you look here, the red line that I've just added to the graph shows that $12 million limit. The first item that you see there is our material and services budget. A lot of the material and service budget is actually our largest item in that material and service budget is for the purchase of water that we deliver to our customers. There's essentially no way that we could cut that $25.8 million annual amount, cut $12 million out of that and still be able to purchase the water as well as all the other supplies that we need and professional services, postage to send out bills and so forth, to cut the material and service budget to meet that $12 million amount. We look at the personnel services budget, the same thing. We got $21 million in there, and it wouldn't be feasible to cut that by $12 million. We would be without the basic employees we need to read meters, service our customers, repair the system, operate the system. In our in-district CIP, we've got about $28 million per year. That would devastate the CIP that we need to keep the system in good operating order. Now, it is possible that you could take a little bit out of each of these and you could do less than 12 million, and certainly those are all opportunities. But we did, again, because of COVID-19, we looked really hard at our M&S budget, our personnel service budget, and the CIP as we went through the last budget cycle and really wrung as much savings out of that as we can. So in a sense, I guess the point I'm making here is I don't think we can cut our way out of this financial challenge that we have, and that we're going to have to look at revenues as well. Now, in the forecast, we have a lot of risks, and I know I've talked to you all about this in the past, but again, we do want to make this available to the public as well. Interest rates and inflation, big risk. We just learned earlier this week, the producer price index went up by 9.7% on a year-over-year basis. I just presented to you on our SDCs, went up 6.52% on a year-over-year basis from December to December. So we are seeing inflation, and that will affect interest rates and our future borrowing cost. What we haven't taken fully into account is the impact that might have on the in-district CIP. Obviously, the program and Dave Kraska's team has done a lot of work looking at their capital projects, but we need to take a similar look at our in-district CIP to make sure we have adequate budget for those improvements as well. The other thing we have is schedule risk. If we delay certain projects because of the inflationary impacts, it could actually end up costing us more as the costs escalate beyond what we have. The other thing that's important, inflation can have important impacts on our operating expenses, and we need to look very closely at that, and that presents risk to our forecast. Future cost of water, we are at the point of developing those cost estimates. We have assumptions in our financial forecast of how much it will cost us to get water out of the new treatment plant. Those numbers are being refined as we speak right now and should be available within a year or more. Future revenue, customer growth and SDCs are very volatile and subject to the local economy. Water demands, which can be affected by weather, as well as growth in the system and customer preferences. We're also worried about the impact that increases in rates have on water demand. Beaverton annexations withdrawal is always a concern. And the last one we have listed here is actually a very important one for us, which is the affordability and collections. Most of our customers will not have a difficulty with the increased cost that we're going to have to pass on as relates to making these capital improvements. But some of our customers will experience a difficulty. We've made resources available in the last budget. The board increased the contribution to the Customer Emergency Assistance Fund dramatically. We now have $250,000 per year budgeted for assisting customers. But as these costs go up, we're likely to see more customers with more difficulty paying their bills. And then the last item I have listed here are the black swan events, the things that we aren't looking. You just got a great briefing on the CIS. That's a high-risk project. I'm thrilled that it's going well, but you know, something could go wrong, could cause a difficulty. We want to make sure we don't do anything that could put that project at risk. The pandemic, we didn't think we were going to have a pandemic when we did, when we looked at the program several years ago and started, but those things happen. War, recently in the news, we've heard more and more talk about war and the impact that could have on the cost of oil and how that would ripple throughout our economy, as well as could complicate supply issues. And of course, the black swan events, so there could be other things that we are not thinking of right now. So based on our initial meetings that we had both with the Water Supply Committee and with the Finance Committee, we have developed three options. I'm listing here four. The status quo is essentially what we presented in the approved financial plan back in May of last year. And it's really only used for comparison purposes. It's to show you what the impacts will be. And it does not have adequate resources to fund the $200 million increase in the capital outlay that we're expecting. So the first option that we look at, and I'll show you the details in just a moment, would have no changes in the current biennium. Essentially, the board took action in September that increased the rates November 1 of 2021 and adopted a rate increase for November 1 of 2022. Under option A, those rate increases would remain the same, and that we would look at the rate burden hitting us in 23 and 25. That's option A. Option B would be that we'd actually revise the rate increase for November of 22, and we would come up with a levelized rate increase, an estimate that would have equal rate increases from now until we hit that the end of the funding strategy, which is in 2025. And then option C would be no change to the currently adopted rates for this November, but that we would then implement, starting in May of 23, rate increases on a 6-month basis as needed. So presented here, this is new information that you haven't seen. This is our financial analysis that Joe Healy did to help us see what the impacts would be on rates and typical bills under these various options. So the top panel here shows the impact in terms of the rate increases. So we had originally adopted for November 2022 a 9.5% rate increase. That is the adopted rate increase. The board takes no action. That is what will happen. And then we had estimated for 24 about a 4% rate increase for fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25. That's what was in the plan before we encountered this new capital requirement. Option A is essentially keep that 9.5% in place, and then we'd see about 15% rate increases in 24 and another 15% in 25 for about a cumulative increase over that period of time of about a 44.5%. I'd say 45% is really what that number would look like, just rounded off. Option B would be to take action now, increase that rate increase from the 9.5% to a 12%, and then implement, get on that glide path of 12%, which given the current assumptions is where we think we would be over that 3-year period. That would result in about a 40% cumulative rate increase over that period of time. Option C is the one that shows the 6-month rate increases. So we would keep the currently adopted 9.5% rate increase this fall, and then May of 23 it would come out to be about a 5.7% rate increase. Now we would recalibrate these rate increases each year as new information becomes available on water sales, some of the other impacts on inflation, and our CIP, as well as the water supply system. We'd recalibrate that each time. In fact, we do that with the other rate increases as well. but that gives you a flavor of what that would look like. And if you look at the bottom panel, you can see the impact on customer bills. The typical customer bill, and just as a reminder, that's a single family residential customer that consumes 7 CCF of water per month, 14 over a 2-month period. We show all these numbers on a monthly basis to make it easier to compare to other utility bills, but you can see the impact that the various options would have on our customer bills. So what is our strategy for this rate adjustment? A couple things that we need to look at. First is our public outreach and policy development. We need to go through a process of working with the public and actually providing you, our board, information that you can use to create your policy. So we're going to go through a process. We're going to talk about that for a bit. And how we might use the rate advisory committee to do that. And then we need to update our financial plan and bring that back to the board, the financial strategy, and get approval for that. Once we have that, then we can go through a public process for the adoption of the rates if that's where the board directs us. So you might remember that back in 2016, 2017, we convened a rate advisory committee. That was an ad hoc committee. It had a very limited charter that we put together, and the goal would be to reconvene an ad hoc committee like the Rate Advisory Committee to help us with the public outreach and the policy development. And a lot of questions we'd want to run past this committee to make sure that we have fully informed decisions before we come back with a recommendation. We would have professionally facilitated workshops with a diverse group of stakeholders, just like we did in 2016-17, where we actually had a facilitator hired to run the workshops and make sure that the diverse group of stakeholders were actively engaged in the process. It was extremely successful back in 2016-17, and we're hoping to get the same kind of reaction from the group and the same kind of group to provide that same success to us here. We initially worked with the board's finance committee to talk about the charter, talk about some of the policies that we would ask the this proposed RAC to look at, and then what we would do is bring it back to the board a final briefing on our proposed approach of working with the rate advisory committee. A couple things I wanted to highlight here. There are two policies that we really want the RAC to consider this time. In 2016-17, they had a whole laundry list of things that they looked at. Here, we want to look at two things. At least that's our proposal until we have an opportunity to hear from you. First would be the timing and the frequency of the rate increases. We'd want to work with the RAC to have them provide a recommendation. The prior RAC recommended actually that we do a biennial rate increase, as we've been doing now for the last several years, several biennium, where the board would take action at the beginning of the biennium, and that would then set the course for the remaining part of the biennium. They liked that because it allowed them to do better planning. That's what the RAC told us back in 2016-17, and that was the basis for their recommendation. Now we were going to ask them, would a more frequent rate increase that would be lower, would that be less disruptive to our customers, and would that be a better approach? So that's one question we want to ask the Rate Advisory Committee, given our current circumstances. The second is to complete the conversation that we had on the customer assistance program. The RAC had several recommendations for customer assistance programs, but many of the recommendations left the details to the board management. And so we'd like to take those back to the Rate Advisory Committee. And of course, we want to make sure that everything we do is consistent with our CIS project. We don't want to do anything that would get in the way of success there. But the CIS project had contemplated the RAC recommendations from the beginning, but we want to make sure that we work closely with Andrew and his team to support the CIS project and not become an obstacle to their success. If we look back at the 2016-17 RAC purpose, they talked a lot about affordability of water rates and in light of the future rate increases. Interestingly enough, the rate increases that they were looking at was going to take the typical bill to about $100. And if you remember just a few slides ago, we had it about $90. So we're still below what we had talked to the RAC back in 2016-17 as to what we thought the water bills would be by 2026. But the RAC did back then, it looked at the affordability of water given our rate increases, and it assisted the district in defining criteria for affordability. What does it mean to be affordable? It served as a sounding board for the project team as we were trying to develop policies around that, explored different options and policy decisions. For example, what does it mean to be low income? Would the low income discount be available to customers who were disabled but not low income, or would you have to be both disabled and low income to qualify? Things of that nature. And it reported to the board in a advisory capacity. We want to duplicate that same question here. So the relevant policy issues for the RAC this time, should the district address affordability within its rate structure? That's one question we have. Tom has talked about this in the past. We want to put that question directly to the rate advisory committee and provide policy options for them and ask them to make a recommendation. What are the district's options for addressing affordability? I want to get them on to help us understand that, again, with that diverse group of stakeholders. And what are other policy considerations that we need to have? Who qualifies? How will the program be paid for? All those kinds of questions. So we want to work with this RAC and ask those questions to come back with recommendations. And then, of course, the last one is, should we be having multiple year rate increases? Again, the same question that we asked last time. So what are our next steps? Our current focus is on the Willamette Water Supply Program. The inflationary pressures may affect our operation expenditures and some of the non-WWS capital outlays. So we want to take time to make sure that we've looked at all those expenditures and solidified our financial strategies to go forward. We want to do that by working with the Finance Committee to review the alternative strategies that we have. We want to present the financial strategies to the board in April. We want to update the financial plan for approval in May. We want to have, when do that, so we'll have time to engage in a rate process in June through September this year. All the while, we do want to engage a RAC as soon as we can. It does take time to solidify those members, to get a consultant on board. So we want to get the financial plan adopted and work with the RAC in a sort of a parallel process to make sure that we can stay on time and budget. So with that, any questions that you might have, I'd like to answer those. Any direction you have, we'd like to receive that as well and hear any discussion that you have.
Hi, this is Jim Doan. Why are we reinventing the wheel?
Actually, Commissioner Doan,
you're talking about the Finance Committee. None of those members were part of the original Rate Advisory Committee. If we're going to have common members with the old Rate Advisory Committee, then it seems to me that you ought to have a common member from the board. And I'm not looking for additional work, but it seems to me that, you know, hi, here's this thing. You guys all get to reinvent the wheel. All the information, assuming there's any continuity in members, all the information you had 5 years ago is garbage. And so here, we'll just start all over. You can't do this to our customers. You know, we'll just throw everything away and we'll just start again. I'm astonished that we would come up with something like that.
Well, Commissioner Doan, we can definitely adjust our plan to make sure that we aren't. Quite frankly, with you, that's an oversight on my part. I apologize for that. I just hadn't connected that dot, but you're absolutely right. If I think back through who were the board liaisons to the RAC, it was you and Commissioner Burke. And so let us rework that. I will, first of all, accept my apology for that. You're right. I just kind of forgotten about that, and we will adjust our plan. In terms of the financial strategies, those we probably need to do a broader approach on that as well. So your comment is well received here, and I appreciate the feedback that you have. We'll make an adjustment to the strategy.
Okay, it wasn't only Commissioner Burke. I was part of that too.
Yes.
And you know, I just can't believe we're here.
No, Commissioner Doan, that's why I apologize to you. You were definitely the board liaison along with Commissioner Burke, and we'll retool this to make sure that we get that taken care of. Any other direction for us? I appreciate that. We will address that though, Commissioner Doan.
Thank you.
That's Commissioner Duggan. Paul, I am glad that we're reconstituting the ability to discuss these issues, and even if we don't have a continuity with all the members, I think some of the organizations that were a part of that rate advisory committee I believe they will likely have new representatives anyway. But I think we definitely need to include that same basic grouping of folks that represent a good cross-section of the different interest groups that we have in the area, especially those that are dealing with the lower income and the more isolated elements of our community that may only interact with us with paying a bill, and they have busy lives and aren't well represented even by us board members because, well, they're just too busy with their day-to-day concerns to worry about where their water comes from. As long as it's safe and it's there and it's reasonably be priced, they're not gonna think twice about it. So thank you for getting that work together and starting this up again, because yeah, we definitely want to vet out some of those choices that need to be made in the coming months and years.
Thank you. We'll definitely do that. And you are right. Some of the memberships, for example, Community Action, their representative is now moved on to a different role, but we found their participation to be so valuable. And we'll definitely reach out to them and try to get representation, because they do present great advantage to us. They administer the programs for us and do the qualifications. So we definitely want their participation to the extent we can get them to participate. So if there are no other questions, we're going to prepare response to Commissioner questions and comments, and Commissioner Doan, yours in particular. And I do appreciate that, and we will definitely address that. And I hope you can accept my apology for that oversight. And if desired, we can present information at the March 1st work session, which I think, given that we are going to make some adjustments to what we do here, that probably makes sense at least to come back and describe how we're going to move forward with the RAC process and integrate it into the rest of our strategy. So if there are other comments or other direction that you have, I would like to get those as to the extent that we can tonight, so we can come back at the March 1st work session with the ability to address your comments and concerns. So we heard from Commissioner Doan, and I definitely appreciate that. Are there any other recommendations, directions from other commissioners that we should bring back at the March work session?
This is Commissioner Bagnall. I would just like to thank you for all of the work you've done on this, and I know I want to express my appreciation for how difficult this situation is and how dynamic it is. I said I appreciate the difficulty, and I really appreciate the options that you're giving us and the outreach that you're doing to our customers.
Thank you. The rest of my presentation I didn't intend to provide. You might remember that in the past I've added to the presentation material so that you could receive it before the board meeting, an update on our financial performance. I've done that again. There's good news in those numbers. A lot of the revenue impacts that we saw because of COVID-19, we've seen recovery in those. And so it's kind of a good news packet as we start to head into this Lenten period that we're entering. So it is attached to this presentation, and you should have received it in your packet. If there are any questions about that I can address, I'd be more than happy to go to those particular slides. Otherwise, that concludes my presentation for the evening.
Any last questions for Chief Financial Officer Matthews? Paul, not hearing any. I think
Thank you.
I think your evening is complete. And I also believe that that would be the end of our evening as well. So, there being no further business before the Board of Commissioners this evening, I will call this meeting to adjournment. I will